Alright, I'm back with layer 2 of the Katawa Shoujo Iceberg. Starting with the first one, from the Portuguese iceberg again, Misha's disability. I kind of answered this one back in layer 1. Basically, officially, Misha has no disability. I did find another speculation about what disability she may have, which was dyslexia, though again, there's not really any evidence for this, but I did find a nice comment by someone else online that I wanted to add that may be kind of part of the overall Misha disability theme. Quote, or maybe that's her problem. People feel the need to label her and fix her. The constant pressure could lead to some social anxiety. Not enough to keep you out, but enough for her to stay in. Just food for thought. Maybe you are the one with the problem trying to label her idea. End quote. So maybe it's us with the disability because we're constantly trying to put a label on her. Next one, origins of scenarios. This one seems to be about the origins of the background images. Again, this started in Portuguese, so with Google translation into English may not be a perfect translation. As I mentioned earlier, Yamaku Academy is based on images of Brown University. Some of the city images come from locations in Tokyo and Kamakura in Japan. You can find a long list on Reddit that details where everything came from, with even like Google street views of them. Scenes in anime. I believe this is just talking about at the end of Act 1, and you pick one of the girl's routes, you get an anime style video about the girl and Hisao. There apparently was also an April Fool's joke about the game getting an anime adaptation the developers revealed on their blog. The images for this joke anime were just recolorings of the Higurashi anime. The longest route. I think this means the longest in terms of in-game time. If not, I found Lilly's is the longest in terms of the total word count you will see in a route. Emmy's has more words in her route, but you won't see all of them in a given Emmy route because of the different endings. The longest in terms of in-game time seems to be Shizune, which goes up to graduation. Then Lilly's, which goes up to summer vacation. Then Rin's, which goes up to at least summer vacation. Hanako's lasting a few weeks and no real time scale in Emmy's, but seems to end before summer vacation. Misha's route. Apparently in the very early development of the game, a Misha and Kenji route were actually considered, but vetoed because they wanted to stay true to the source material, the Rada image. There is a joke of a Misha route in the Katawa community for the scene and outcome you get for choosing to comfort Misha. There are fanfics of a Misha route apparently as well, so you can use those, or there's a few Misha mods out there you can try. I haven't played them, I don't know how well they are. Rivalry between Shizune and Lilly. The rivalry between the two seems to have nothing or very little to do with the difficulties of communication between the two of them. Lilly being blind and Shizune needing someone to translate for her in the common parlance, so to speak. The main reason for the rivalry is that they both have different leadership styles and ideologies behind that, ways that they handle other people that may even stem from the difficulties of communication from their disabilities. Shizune is very stubborn and wants people to work hard, even pushing them to work harder. She also likes to poke and prod at people to better understand them for their mentality, temperament, and how they handle situations that may make them uncomfortable, and see how they handle and grow from it. During Shizune's route, she plays a game of chess with Hanako that ultimately ends in Hanako crying and running off. This comes from her poking and prodding Hanako to try and better understand her. Lilly is more relaxed and lets people act how they want and watches how things play out while encouraging more gently from the sidelines. Lilly is more content with things, and instead of pushing people who work hard all the time or prodding them, she may offer more gentle suggestions to them. This can be seen in the way she talks to Hisao about his issues with himself. Combined with both of them being their respective class representatives, their leadership styles come into conflict fairly regularly. Shizune's bad ending. Shizune's route is maybe the least liked of the routes, though Shizune is a good character and her route overall is decent. The main problem is just that this being essentially a dating style game, it doesn't really feel like you two are dating. So the part of the problem with the route is just the general romance between her and Hisao. The main problem with the bad ending is that for most people, it didn't feel like it belonged in the final game. To get the bad ending, you have to comfort Misha, meaning you slam pissers. After this, Hisao and Misha start growing more distant from Shizune, and it is implied that Shizune both blames herself for the group breaking up, as well as figuring out that Hisao and Misha banged. This causes Shizune to kind of mentally collapse in on herself, since she's supposed to be a strong woman type character who starts to blame herself for everything that went wrong in the end. She's essentially blaming herself for being too hard on others, and ultimately that her style of doing things was wrong and caused the issues that arose. The final shot of Shizune's bat end is her sitting on the stairs looking depressed, with the cat plushie that Hisao had given her earlier sitting in her bag. So the abrupt ending to Shizune's route, combined with the depression and realization it is really all your fault, you chose to comfort Misha, makes the ending really impactful. Anonymous protagonist. According to the dev blog on September 13, 2009, there was a grand battle over our protagonist's name. Many people wanted to leave him anonymous as a homage to, well, the Anonymous who were the driving force of the project. This coming from 4chan. While others wanted to give him a fixed name and personality. The end result is a schizophrenic combination of the two extremes. A fixed character with a fairly substandard personality. We later found out that a famous psychologist has the same name as Hisao. Did your mother give birth to you in a minefield? This is just a famous meme based on the scene where Emmy runs to Hisao in the hallway and Emmy's on the ground, sitting on her butt, and you can see that she has prosthetics for legs. Part of the joke is about the protagonists in general being the masters of romance that every girl wants to fuck immediately. Erectile dysfunction. In the beginning of the game, when a bunch of medications are flying by the screen, one of them is erectile dysfunction. Probably just a joke. Could be a side effect of the drugs he has to take, or a joke about the type of game this is. Shizune's name pun. I mentioned this back in the first layer, but Shizune's name in Japanese kanji basically translates to no sound, a play on the fact she is mute due to her deafness. Misha's old appearance. This is another I mentioned before. Basically, she dyes her hair in response to Shizune rejecting her romantically. She's brown-haired, which is often a trait of earnest and sincere, but dyes her hair pink, typically meaning energetic and cheery. Like her hair, her story revolves around her hiding her emotions. It's a mask. Katawa Shoujo dev blog. This is the official blog the devs used during the development of the game, and they used to make announcements after the release of the game. They've stopped using it at this point, given that there's nothing really left for them to do with the game. Community participation. I believe this has to do with the community helping get some of the photos that were used for some of the background scenery images in the game. It may also be about how the community helped shape the game throughout the development as they participate in the forums for the game. They had an open call for background scenery images on their dev blog, and people could send them certain things like dorm rooms, I think city landscapes, just for them to try to use, or at least get inspiration from. The nurse's name. The player never learns the nurse's name, though Hisao knows it because he mentions the name is on the nameplate on the nurse's door. The nurse even says Hisao can call him by his name. According to the official dev blog, the school nurse was originally referenced to as Nurse-kun, a reference to a series of threads on 4chan that were about the experience of a real nameless nurse who was in charge of then 7-year-old multi-amputee car crash victim. The story that those threads wove was considered very human and touching, apart from the special 4chan flavor any thread has. The initial post starting the story ponders whether he should R-word his patient or not. This day, nurses and Emmy's relationship still reflects the relationship of the Channer nurse and his patient in some ways. 4chan, oddly enough, coming up with some sweet stories. I think even Everlasting Summer. I saw some people talking about when I was doing a lot of my research for these. Everlasting Summer also started on Russian 4chan. The saddest route. There isn't much debate on which route is the saddest in the game. Among all the bad and neutral routes of the game, Rin's neutral route is largely believed to be the saddest, for good reason. Even in Rin's bad ending, she gets mad at Hisao, she feels something, and can put her feelings and thoughts properly into words. What we're left with is that she loves Hisao but starts to dislike him and pushes him away, so that she can focus on what she considers more important, what she believes will bring her closer to her goal of finding someone who understands her for who she is. And that brings us to the neutral ending. Hisao doesn't push quite as hard. He tries to stay with her and let her be the way she is, but not quite well enough to get the good ending, not quite enough to realize that he doesn't need to completely understand everything about her. What does that do? It makes Rin get even more attached to him and makes her feel like someone finally gets her, like if anyone is going to understand her, it would have to be Hisao. So when Hisao tells her that no one understands anybody, and when she takes that to heart, it's not just Hisao that she gives up on. No, she gives up on her hope of someone understanding her. She lives the rest of her life believing that everyone is just using her, that everyone is in it for themselves, that everyone lives in their own little world and will never be able to meet her in her own. A lot of people talk about Hanako's bad ending and how they sense death flaggy vibes from it, but I disagree. Hanako's bad end was her deciding that she was strong enough and that she didn't need anybody, and that she would rather be by herself than seen as some fragile piece of glass. Hanako will live on. Rin's neutral end, though, is filled with death flags. Take the mention of Sei's husband, for instance. Oh, an artist who was really talented, devoted to their work, and died. Katawa Shoujo is not a game that throws death around lightly. Every death is mentioned has significance to their route. For Rin, it wasn't something related to her backstory, like with the others. No, it was a warning, a foreshadowing of her future. More than any other ending, Rin going off to art school with a new, lonely, hollow view of the world screams to me, this character is going to die. She gave up on what seemed like a lifelong dream for her, and adopted the idea that no one would ever really know her. That to me is by far the saddest ending. Comfort Misha. This is something talked about and memed on fairly regularly in the Katawa Shoujo community. Many people even thought that they saw the option to comfort Misha. They thought it really meant to comfort her, given the current situation. In a sense, you do comfort her. With your penis, though. Emi's face. Emi's face is one of the most reworked and redesigned parts of any of the characters. From the original artwork done by Rated, what was eventually used gives us 4 different total designs. The final reworking of Emi's face had to do with the previous artist working on Emi leaving the project, needing to make Emi's design fit more with the art style of the game and the characters, and to make her look more mature, because the previous design made her look a little too young given the type of game this is. You can still kind of see the old design in one of the CGs for the final product. When Emi's lying on her bed laughing, she seems a little bit younger in that. It's kind of more along the line the way she looked like. So Emi was most likely the last character worked on and needed to look older, which is why her face looks more jagged than the others. Iwanako. Iwanako is a former classmate and the ex-girlfriend of Hisao at the school he attended before transferring to Yamaku Academy. She only appears once in the game, in the prologue, but she is mentioned throughout the story. She writes Hisao a note in the story that he reads and receives in every route. Hisao's reaction to this letter is different in every route, though, to reflect Hisao's mindset and how he is handling his new self and his new life. In some routes, he even replies. The Adventures of Pi. Corporal Crud, the writer of Hanako's route, used inspiration from the story, The Life of Pi, while writing Hanako's route, which is also supposed to be one of the books Hanako reads on her route. The two characters have similar scenarios, lost their families and became isolated. They essentially have the same issues. Pi deals with the literal isolation, whereas Hanako deals with social isolation. However, they parallel each other by being optimistic in a scenario where most people would lose hope. Alternatively, this may be reading too much into the shared themes of the characters. Hisao has no heart problems. I mentioned this before, that on Rin's route, Hisao has almost no, if any, heart problems at all, versus Lilly's path that seems to be plaguing him every other scene. It also has to do with diet, taking his meds regularly, and exercise, and part of it is for plot convenience. In Lily's route, it helps them open up to one another. 100%. As far as I can tell, this is about getting 100% completion of the game by unlocking all the scenes. So you still gotta do the bad endings. Hannibal Lecter connections. The devs have admitted to naming Misha after Hannibal Lecter's sister, Misha. Lilly is an alcoholic. This is basically a joke in the Katawa Shoujo community about how every time Lilly drinks, which seems to regularly happen, especially in her route, she gets tipsy and or drunk. The idea is that basically because she's blind, her other senses are heightened or more sensitive, and so her drinking is she's more susceptible to alcoholism due to that. Shizune's watch. Shizune wears a watch on her right wrist, but it is never shown in-game. It has golden hands and is described as delicate. Akira's birthday. Many fan works give Akira's birthday as May 18th. However, this is not canon. This comes from a short exchange in the Ask topic of the forum, where Aurora said that they hadn't decided what Akira's birthday was and didn't care what birthday Akira was given in fanworks. So the fans have basically just agreed it's May 18th, and unofficially it's officially canon. Misha's broken nail. I mentioned this before as a joke one of the devs made in chat. Misha's disability is she broke a nail in the 3rd grade, and that is why she's at Yamaku, and some people joke that this is canon. Emi's redesign. I mentioned this one not that long ago. Emi was redesigned fairly late in development, but that was to make her look older. She looked too young to be having sex with. Did not look like the legal Loli. Secret Rika route. This is an April Fool's joke by the devs. Essentially, they were going to add some additional routes that would be behind a paywall / subscription service. One of these routes was going to be for a girl named Rika, who has a heart condition like Hisao, except she has what is called hypoplastic left heart syndrome. She was supposed to be kind of introverted, though would talk to people if she was approached. Basically, NPC energy. There's a fanfic for a Rika route called Can You Open Your Heart? I haven't read it, but it's supposed to be very well done. Kinji Harry Potter influence. Kinji's appearance seems to be heavily inspired by Harry Potter. At least is what some people seem to think. I don't think this is official. They took inspiration from Harry Potter, but we could just say it is. Why not? It mostly has to do with the glasses, the scarf having the colors of the Gryffindor house, and the black hair. But Kenji even has a line that kind of references to this when he says, "Hey man, you still in that club, the club of the dark arts. You never date Shizune." I really don't know what this one was even going for. I guess just for the basic fact they don't feel like a couple, but more like friends with benefits. During Shizune's route, she signs at the end of her act, or Hisao signs to her at the end of her act 2, "Hey, do you want to be my girlfriend?" To which she replies, "Okay," and then embraces him using the gesture or signing she knows would best show her feelings. This is probably just some cope people have about her route. Alright, layer 3. Kenji's past. In the deep end scene, Kenji reveals that he once had a girlfriend, about a year before Hisao transferred to Yamaku. According to him, he had sexual intercourse with her once. After the experience, Kenji claims he felt more fatigued than expected. This, of course, reveals Kenji's misogyny stems from a combination of his ignorance of how tiredness is a natural effect of sexual activity and his poor stamina. From this, he believed there was something sinister was in the works and formulated a theory that women are dangerous, sapping the life force of all men through the one commodity that is almost solely theirs to control. This is later contradicted by his claim that women created industrialization to cover their tracks. Many fans speculate that the ex-girlfriend was Yuko Shirakawa, the librarian. And this was actually true in the beta, but it was removed from the finished game and only really implied in the final product. Some fans believe, however, that Kenji is deep in the closet and that his misogyny is a cover for his homosexuality. Evidence for this is that Kenji may have been planned to be the game's gay route originally. Him appearing buck naked to Hisao in the bathroom, asking him for money to buy a pizza, and his manly picnic ends with him leaning in towards Hisao with the song "To Become One," the game's resident sex scene song playing in Hisao's fall to his death. Misha's dyed hair. I talked about this one in the previous layers. Misha dyes her hair to symbolize her moving on from romantically pursuing Shizune, though she doesn't really move on. It's all a mask. The Deep End. This is the name of the scene where Hisao gets on the Kenji route and falls off the roof and dies. The point of the route seems to be about how you have pushed others away, and the whole time avoiding getting closer to any of the girls or showing your vulnerability to them. The final choice to get this scene is you telling Lilly on the walk up the hill that you are fine when your heart gives you problems, not willing to open up even slightly about your disability at a school for the disabled.
Good job!
Eggplant Cat. This is the cat plushie Hisao wins for Shizune at the school festival, actually called the Eggplant Cat by the devs. Bush Cheney 2004, the shirt Misha wears in the game. There are two theories about it. One is it might indeed also be a stab towards either Japanese folks wearing shirts with English text, or Americans wearing shirts with Japanese kanji, who think the symbols on the shirt look cool, but they don't really know what it means. The second is the fact that Cheney's daughter is a lesbian. Or maybe it's both. Canon ending. Officially, there is none. Unofficially, the two that come up the most are Lilly and Shizune's. Shizune's because it takes place over the longest amount of time, features most of the other characters fairly heavily, and fills in the most extra detail. Therefore, it must be canon. On the other hand, Lilly's route has an after credits epilogue, which gives more closure, and some people attributing having an epilogue to being a true ending. This may also be referencing that Ren's neutral ending is labeled the true ending in the game files. The reason being the writer for Ren's route, Aurora, didn't think that in real life Hisao and Ren would end up together. Kenji inspired by Harry Potter. I mentioned this in the previous layer. Basically, Kenji looks like Harry Potter and the scarf has the colors from House Gryffindor. Out of place hentai scenes. Many people feel that some of the sex scenes are very out of place in the game, like they're kind of tacked on. For instance, in Lily's route, you confess to each other and then immediately go to pipe on the floor of the living room. I do think part of the reason was that given the game is an eroge, they felt the need to have sex scenes in the game, and so they had to write them in. The idea being they all at least needed to have one sex scene. Granted, Lily's is multiple is kind of attributed to part of her story. Monday, November 5th, 2007. This is the first day that a post was made on the dev blog. The post was essentially just saying that it was the first post of the official blog and to expect official news and updates here. Developer Diaries. This was a series that was part of the dev blog. They would essentially just give updates of the game, how progress is going, what is new or changed, etc. Kind of a way to remind people and let them know that the game exists and is still being worked on, that it's not abandoned. Mickey's route. Mickey kind of has an official route. It isn't part of the game, but part of another game/mod called Summer's Clover, though it isn't canon. The mod was written by one of the lead writers of Katawa Shoujo, the writer of Lily's route. Again, it's not canon. alpha version. The alpha version of the game was leaked online, though nobody really seems to know who leaked it from what I could find. There were many differences between the alpha and what eventually became the final product. For instance, Hanako's route has multiple bad endings. In ending 1, Hanako commits unaliving herself by throwing herself in front of a train. Hisao is present but doesn't have the chance to stop her from doing this. I assume the events leading to this are similar to her official bad ending. Ending 2. Hanako slaps meat with Hisao to prove that Hisao just wanted to have sex with her and wants nothing to do with her as a person. Somewhat shocked, Hisao clumsily gets up with his pants partially down his legs, making movements more difficult. He hits the side of his desk and breaks his neck, I think, while Hanako just watches. She calls him disgusting. What's the worst thing she could do, man? Just say no? Ending 3. Hanako has a major relapse and completely shuts down and locks herself in her room. Hisao and Lilly try to get her to snap out of it. Hanako responds relatively well to Lily's voice, but at the mention of Hisao's name, she's so out of it that she doesn't seem to notice him visually. She screams and tries to run for the door and escape, but it's locked, so she can't get out easily. During her dash to the door, she knocks down Hisao, causing him to start coughing up blood. Hisao stubbornly tries to help Hanako snap out of it, but makes it even worse. She hits him even harder in his chest. Now, instead of small spurts of blood coming up, blood is coming out like a waterfall. As Hisao fades to unconsciousness and soon after death, he sees Hanako clawing her eyes out. And ending 4, this is her true ending, and the only happy ending she gets. You must have completed at least one of the bad endings for this to be available. You need to go on Lily's path and it gives you a hidden opportunity that isn't normally available unless you completed a Hanako bad ending to pursue Hanako instead. This is sort of like the official Hanako good ending, but during the H scene, Hisao managed to get Hanako pregnant. She plans to carry the child or children throughout the 9 months, and beyond that, Hanako and Hisao are together and have a pretty strong bond. They live happily ever after. The 1-year anniversary. This is a dev blog post by Corporal Crud, basically talking about how the project started and the troubles they had along the way. But they are still chugging along and going for it. Emi beta designs. I mentioned this in the previous layer. Basically, Emi was the only character to get a redesign after the Act 1 demo drop. She was made to look more mature and older because she looked too young given the type of game this is. Japanese version April Fools. So 4LS has a history of making joke posts on the dev blog for April Fool's Day. While on April Fool's Day 2015, they really did release the Japanese translation for the game. But people were skeptical given their history and they tried to figure out what the April Fool's joke was. The joke, I guess, was there was no joke. Fan arts. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory, but it has to do with the magnitude of fan art the game has for it. Some of it's really well done. Katawa Shoujo 2. There is a Chinese knockoff of Katawa Shoujo 2. I haven't played it. It doesn't look great, and we'll even talk about it more later. But this is most likely talking about a dev blog April Fool's joke. They talked about how they were canceling and not going to create/release Katawa Shoujo 2. Instead, they were moving ahead with Katawa Shoujo 3. Shizune's mother. Shizune's mom is never mentioned in the game, not by anyone, so the question came up, is she dead? Just away during Hisao's visit, or divorced/separated from Jigoro? Shizune never even mentions or talks about her father and brother until Hisao is going to meet them, so that may be part of the reason she never mentions her mom. Maybe they weren't that close. But in Shizune's route, in the guest bedroom, there's a mention of a wedding photo, assumably Jigoro's and Shizune's mom's wedding photo. The popular theory is that Jigoro and her mom are divorced. Jigoro is far too prideful to mention it, and the children don't mention it to avoid the scorn of Jigoro. Most likely, Shizune's mom is with her brother in Scotland. The writer for Shizune's route, A22, has allegedly mentioned that leaving out the mom was intentional, most likely to distill that sense of mystery regarding the family that a boyfriend might have when meeting his girlfriend's family for the first time, especially a traditional one. Oi and Keiko. Oi and Keiko are a pair of students at Yamaku, and the successors to the school student council after Shizune and Misha graduate. At the end of Shizune's route, Oi and Keiko are seen in the Yamaku student council room, receiving a rundown from a Misha translated Shizune how to run things. Alright. Cameroon. So, I'd like to remind you, this iceberg starts off in Portuguese. I can't read Portuguese, so I translated everything using Google to English. So, this one here, this Portuguese term, apparently means Cameroon, which is an African nation. I can't find any link between it and Katawa Shoujo. Maybe this is a Portuguese specific thing, but I have no idea. However, this specific anime girl does keep appearing in the search results when I was Googling this. I don't know what it has to do with Cameroon or Katawa Shoujo other than the tags that were used for this image. Misha's unaliving. I mentioned this in other topics. Back in the beta, and I believe the alpha as well, Misha was going to unalive herself no matter what on the Shizune route. She saw that the person she loved most, her best friend, and the person she's most attached to, she translated everything for Shizune, was essentially leaving her and getting a boyfriend. Rin is friends with Kenji. There is no evidence for this. In Rin's route, the first time they ever seem to meet, Kenji tries to shake Rin's hand and tries to hand her a note with the word honey muffin on it. It is also mentioned that, quote, from his face, I can see that not only he hasn't known Rin, he also can't see her from this short distance, end quote. So I don't know what this is based on, other than the talks of a blind guy in the art room, but when you see the art room screenshot during Rin's route, Kenji isn't there. But you can't see someone who does look blind. Leanna and Adrian. During development, Lilly had two other sisters who were twins, Leanna and Adrian, but they were dropped before any scenes for them were written. Saki's route is finished. I believe I talked about her before. On the dev blog, there was a joke that adding a Saki route, the same blog post that talks about adding the Rika route, to the game in an expansion. Saki is the first seen and probably seen once in the game on Rin's route during the panoramic of the art club. This was confirmed in a blog post to be Saki. At one point during development, Saki was in the game as a minor character, but her scenes and her role were cut. There is a pseudo Saki route that is being written as a fanfic for the game and is being adapted into a mod for the game as well, now that 4LS is allowing mods. I've also found another one involving them, but it seems to have stopped development. I don't know if they're going to pick it back up or what's happening with it. Misha and Emi had sex. This is something that happened in the alpha, and I think also in the beta. But it isn't really canon since it doesn't make way into the final project. I think it accepted a few lines, one-off lines. Though Emi's writer, the Hive Mind, has said Emi is bisexual, so there's still a chance. From what I could find, the scene for this in the alpha went like this. In Hanako's good ending path, there's a post-studying party where Hisao and all 6 girls get drunk. Rin and Shizune end up passed out in the corner together, but not before Misha asks Emi if she wants to go and finish off something they started earlier. Misha gives Hisao a wink and a smile, and the 2 girls disappear off together. It was confirmed by the devs they were going to have sex. Rosa. Shizune's original name was going to be Rosa. According to the dev blog on her name, she was originally named Rosa, as in the flower rose, and a silly pun for the Japanese word for deafness, Rosha. We decided that one girl with the flower's name and a foreign name was enough, so Shizune became Shizune. That's their official reasoning. Hisao's eye color. Since many artists worked on the game, Hisao's eye color changes a bit throughout the CGs in the game and throughout some of the scenes, though the recognized eye color of Hisao is brown. Lilly's cello. In the early development of Lilly, she had 2 things, a guide dog and a cello. The guide dog was scrapped because her route largely deals with her loneliness, and having a 4-legged friend wouldn't really make sense. The cello is not really given a reason for its removal. It most likely didn't add anything to the story and would have ultimately been pointless. Emi's mom is dating the nurse, or at least they're slapping meats. This is a popular theory surrounding Emi's mom and the nurse. It is heavily implied, given the way they talk to and about each other. Emi's mom wanders off to see a friend during the track meet scene. It was even said by the Hive Mind in his interview on Maddie D's channel that there was going to be a scene where Hisao comes over to Emi's house and the nurse opens the door. Emi's mom is going to be implied to have been putting her shirt on because the 2 were pounding pissers in the back. So it's basically confirmed as true. Hanako government funding. As an orphan, Hanako is a ward of the state. The government pays for her enrollment at Yamaku. At the very least, that is the theory. I couldn't really find anywhere that this is officially mentioned or confirmed in any way. So maybe there's another way, charitable donations allowing her to go? I don't know. But the government funding sounds plausible, at least.